What's going on, guys? This is Chandler Smith, and in today's video, I'm gonna show you everything that you need to know to be able to get an 800 credit score. And I'm not gonna tell you to go be an authorized user. I'm not gonna tell you to go buy some course. I'm gonna break everything down so you know all of the steps to get and keep an 800 credit score. So with that being said, let's jump into it. All right, guys, for those of you that don't know me, my name's Chandler Smith, and I've been investing in real estate for the last 7+ years. Now, the reason that I share this with you is because in order to buy real estate, you need to get a lot of debt. I currently am in about $8 million worth of debt that I was only able to get access to because I had an incredible credit score. On top of that, I have over $250,000 in a line of credit and over $100,000 in available credit in the multiple credit cards that I have. And so I've gotten to the point where I have a ton of available credit and a ton of debt and an 800 credit score. So I know everything that you need to know to not only get an 800 credit score, but to make the right moves so that when you do apply for some form of credit, the bank's gonna look at you and say, all right, this person has a great score and they're someone that we want to lend money to. Because at the end of the day, that is the only reason that a credit score was created. It really is a report card for you so that when banks or lenders look at you, they say, hey, is this someone an A student that we want to give money to? Or have they been failing when it comes to borrowing money and we don't want to touch them with a 10-foot pole? So I'm going to show you everything you need to know and the steps that you have to take to be able to get to that level of an 800 credit score. Now, I know when it comes to your credit score, this is a very overwhelming topic. And the reason that it's so overwhelming is it's this totally jacked up algorithm that takes everything that you do and puts it together and then gives you a score. And a lot of times you didn't even know that you did things that hurt this score, and you have no idea what you need to do to be able to help this score. So one of the first things I'm going to show you that really helps you understand how your credit score came to be is this picture right here. Now, the reason this picture is so important is you need to know what you're being judged on. You can't ever get an A if you have no idea what you're being judged on or what the right answers are. And so this circle right here breaks down everything for you. And I'm gonna go through each portion of this circle step by step so that you know exactly what you need to do to jack up your credit score. Now, the first portion of this circle I wanna start with is your payment history. And believe it or not, this is actually the most important portion. It actually covers 35% of your credit score. And so if you're doing this right, it's going to help your score dramatically. So when it comes to your payment history, this is how it works. Everyone has some form of debt. Now, if you don't have any form of debt, you can't have good payment history. And we're gonna talk about that more later, but you have to have debt to get more debt. I know, it's kind of a rigged system, but the way that it works is you need to get a credit card. As a matter of fact, I would suggest getting 3 or 4 credit cards as soon as possible. And if you have a home loan, a car loan, anything where you're borrowing money from a bank, these things are all being reported. So for example, let's say you have one credit card and you have made 100 payments on this credit card. Now, if you've missed 10 of these payments, you've only paid 90% of the time. And this is terrible. It's going to totally jack up your score. Now, the only way that you can fix this is having more payments that you pay on time. Because if you have 1,000 payments that you've made and you've only missed 10, now that's totally jacked up your score. You've gone from paying 90% of the time up to paying 99% of the time. So to figure this out, they're going to take your on-time payments and divide them by your total payments, and this percentage is going to depend how well you did in this category. So you can see by this picture, if you're not above a 97%, you're totally screwed. And in order to get to the point where you're getting an 800 credit score, you've got to be 99% plus. And so it's so important to pay on time. And if you haven't paid on time and you've gotten yourself into a hole, it's so important that you get more debt and you pay it on time every single month. Because if you only have one credit card, it's gonna take a long time to be able to build that credit back up because you've only got 12 payments per year. So if you miss 10 payments and you're only working with one credit card to get that score back up, it's going to take forever. But if you're working with a lot of credit cards and you're paying them all off every single month, you're going to have that on-track record of continually paying off your credit, and that's going to jack up your score very quickly in this category that is the most important category. So in short, just pay your freaking bills on time, and the more bills that you have that you are paying on time, the faster your credit score is going to increase. All right, the next section is the amount owed, or the amount of debt that you have. And this actually makes up 30% of your credit score. Now, to show you this one, I want to give you a resource that I have found extremely useful when analyzing my credit score and making moves to increase it. However, it does cost money. Now, I'm not affiliated with this. I'm going to put a link below, but I'm not making any money off of it. It's just something that I've used for years that has been super helpful, and that is having an account at MyFICO. Now, what MyFICO does is it breaks down each one of these categories and literally shows you what has created your credit score. So this little circle here, this came from MyFICO, and when you're in there, you can go through and scan through each one of these sections and see what you're doing right, see what you're doing wrong. Now, this website gives you tons of useful information, but you can see on here, it breaks down my payment history, my amount of debt, the length of my credit history, the amount of new credit, and my credit mix, and it shows me which things I'm doing well at and which ones I'm just doing okay at. Now, right off the bat, my payment history has been exceptional, and that's because I've been above that 99% when it comes to making my payments. The next one I got a very good score on, and that is the amount of debt. Now again, this section makes up 30% of my score, so we're gonna click on it to see what it shows us. Now, if you look in here, it shows your revolving utilization. Mine is at 7%. I would tell you to keep yours below 10% at all times. Now, what this is this is looking at my lines of credit. This is looking at my credit cards. Any of those things where I'm borrowing debt and then paying it off every single month, those are the revolving accounts. So your credit cards, lines of credit, anything else where you're borrowing, spending from that account, that's going to be your revolving utilization. So mine is at 7%. What this is on my credit cards, I'm never going to spend above 10% of my utilization. So I told you I've got around $100,000 just in credit cards and $250,000 in a line of credit. With the access I have to those, I'm never using above 10%. And you can see on here, it says that I'm using 7%. Now, what's nice about these is if you pay them off at the right time, they're gonna go down to 0. What's tricky is you don't always know when they're going to pull. Now, if you call your credit card company and ask them, hey, when do the credit card bureaus pull what my utilization is? Sometimes you can find someone that will tell you that date. And if you can, you wanna make sure that you always pay off your credit cards a couple days before when they're going to pull that information to the credit bureaus. Now, I've tried doing this, but as you can see, I'm still at a 7% utilization. And the reason for that is I haven't timed it up right on some of those accounts. That's why the other rule that I think you should hold to is never using above a 10% utilization. Now, it's not gonna show you on here, but the reason it's so important to never use over that 10% is not only are they pulling at a specific date, but they also can see what the max you've used has been. For example, if you have $5,000 of available credit and you end up using all $5,000 of that, they can see that you've tapped that out. Or even if you use $4,000, they can see you've used 80% of your revolving credit, and they can see that you've tapped it out to that max, even if it wasn't when they pulled. So it's so important to never go above that 10% utilization. Now, if you have gone above that 10% utilization, what you need to do is you need to ask your current credit cards if you can increase your amount of credit. So if you had a limit of $5,000 and you used $4,000 at one point, but now you increase your credit all the way up to where you've got $20,000 of available credit, now you've only used 20% of your utilization in comparison to the 80% you were using before. So that's another life hack to be able to get more credit, and make sure that you're never using above the 10% of that utilization. And if you have, make sure that you increase the amount of available credit that you have through your banks so that it looks better, and that's going to help to increase your score. Now, a lot of people will argue, oh, Chandler, you can use up to 20 or 30% of your utilization. No, here's the deal. They've got different benchmarks. I don't think anyone knows perfectly where those bumps are, but I would tell you never use above 10% if you can help it, because that is going to help your score. Now, on this next section, you can see I have 13 accounts with balances. Now, I know that that's 3 credit cards, that's a car loan, and that's 9 loans on properties. Now, I know a lot of you are saying, Chandler, you've got a lot more units than 9 units. Yes, I do, but I just sold a property and I only have 9 of those under my personal name. A lot of them are either under my wife or under my businesses or LLCs, and so it's just pulling the 13 that are under my name. It's also going to look at the utilization of these properties. So if you've got a property on a 30-year loan that you've only had for 1 year, if you've got 25% down, that's gonna help a little bit, but at the same time, you've still got a ton of debt that you've got to pay down over time. And so every time I get a new loan, it is going to bump my score down a little bit. Now, they understand that this is on a home loan, so it's not gonna hurt you nearly as much as these credit cards if you're to tap them out and leave them tapped out. For example, if you have a credit card with a $5,000 limit, and you use that $5,000 and then you're just making the minimum payment every single month, that's going to wreck your score. Where if you get a home loan or a car loan and you're making your regular payment even though you owe a ton of debt, those aren't gonna hurt you nearly as much as those revolving accounts. So now that we've talked about the amount of debt, we're gonna jump down to the length of your credit history. Now, if you look on my FICO, you can see the length of my credit history is only fair. And you're wondering, well, how do you have such a good score if you only got a fair score? That's just average. Well, here's the deal. I am always getting new credit. And if you look right here, it says your average age of accounts is 31 months. Now, every time I get new debt, whether I buy a new property, whether I get a new credit card, it's going to hurt this score because now I've got new debt that I've only had for under a month. So that's gonna pull my average from the 31 months down. Now, is 31 months still pretty good? Yeah, it is. And do they recognize that I've got a ton of other debt that a lot of it I've been paying off for years? Yeah, they do. So even though I've got a fair score, I still am able to get over an 800 credit score because the first 2 I've been killing it with, and I still have a pretty good amount of debt that I've been paying off for a very long time. Now, if you click on the length of your credit history, there are only 2 factors that it gives you on this little app. It's gonna show your average credit and it's gonna show your oldest credit. And so those should be the 2 things that you're most focused on. Now, your oldest credit means that you need to get a credit card as soon as possible. And you need to get a couple if you can, because they're gonna look, and if they see that you just got a credit card 1 month ago and that's the only credit you have, you're gonna have a bad score. But if you get your first credit card when you're 8 years old and now you're 20, you're gonna have a ton of credit history, and your oldest account is gonna help pull down all of the averages of your other accounts that you pick up when you get a new credit card or a car loan or a house loan. And so get a credit card as soon as you can and make sure, again, you're making those regular payments on it. Now, this next one is the amount of new credit. And you can see this only makes up 10% of the score, which is great news for me because I'm always getting new debt. I'm always getting new credit. And so recognize anytime that your credit is pulled because you're checking to see if you can get a loan, that's going to affect you here. Anytime you get a new loan, that's going to affect you here. So recognize every time that you get new debt, you're going to be negatively affected. And so you want to time things up right to where you're not getting tons and tons of new debt if you've got a big purchase in the future, because you can totally screw yourself over. So a lot of people come to me and they say, Chandler, I want to apply for a car or a loan. My credit isn't quite there. Well, here's the deal. You've got to come up with a strategy, and your strategy shouldn't be, I'm going to go get 4 new credit cards and a car loan, and then I'm going to try and apply for this home loan. I'm worried where my credit score is at. Because if you do that, it will affect your credit score. Now, if you have no credit at all, you're forced to go get new credit. And so what I would do is I would try and get 2, 3, 4 credit cards at once so that you can get that new debt all at once and you can start building up all of those other categories when it comes to your scores. And you'll notice that you'll get big bumps in your score, especially if you're starting out on the 3-month, the 6-month, and the 9-month benchmark and on a year. So if you know you want to buy a house a year from now, go get your 4 credit cards and make sure that you're doing all of the other things we've talked about correctly so that when it's time to buy the home, you've been able to bump up that score. Now, finally, you've got your credit mix, and this is another one where I score extremely well. And so we're gonna click on it here. The reason I score so well on this is because I've got a lot going on. I've got 4 revolving accounts. I have 14 installment loans, including mortgages. I've got my car payment. I've got my mortgages. I've got credit cards, and all of them I'm making consistent payments on. So I've got a good mix of different kinds of credit. And that's why I tell people it's so important to get credit cards and then also to get a car loan and to get a home loan. And if you don't want to take out a huge amount of debt, if you're saying, well, Chandler, I can afford my car in cash. Well, here's the deal. Only take out a loan for like $5,000 then, because then that's going to help your mix of credit and it's not going to cost you hardly anything at a 3 or 4% on your interest rate, but it will put you in a place where if you want to buy a home or an investment property, you've got a somewhat good mix because you don't just have credit cards, but you also have a car loan and a house loan. That's why when people come to me and they say, well, Chandler, I can afford my car in cash. Why would I want to get a loan on it? Well, here's the deal. If you've got just 3 credit cards and that's the only debt you have, your score isn't going to be as good as it can be. And so even if you're buying a car for $25,000 and you can say, Chandler, I can afford the whole thing in cash, that's awesome. Just take out a loan for a couple $1,000s, drag it out over the 5 or 6 years, and then you're in a place where you're making tiny payments. You're paying hardly anything in interest, but you're building credit. You're building your score. You're putting yourself in a place where if you want to buy a home or an investment property, your score will be in a place where you can handle that. And once you can afford a home, once you can afford an investment property, make sure that you're pulling out the debt on it and starting to build that history. Now, I'm not saying go over leverage yourself. Don't do anything stupid to try and build your credit score. However, if you can get more of a mix and it's going to cost you an extra $100 to $200 a year, it's totally worth it to set yourself up to be able to get into investment properties later. So if it makes sense financially, do everything you can to get a mix of debt because that's going to increase your score so you can afford the investment property or the house down the line. All right, guys, that's everything. And hopefully this video has helped you understand why it works the way that it works so that next time someone says, well, look, you don't need 1 credit card, you need 4, you understand the advantages of having multiple lines of credit because that's going to help you to build your score more quickly. Now, don't overutilize debt. Debt can be such a huge tool, but you can't be an idiot with it. I have so many people that say, Chandler, I don't want to get more credit cards because then I'll use them. Well, if that's the way that you think, you should probably never use credit ever, period. Like you shouldn't have access to a credit card if you can't control yourself to say, look, I'm not going to use it unless I know I can pay it off completely every single month. The same goes with a home loan or a car loan. Do not get any debt unless you are confident and you've set aside reserves so that you can make your monthly payment every single month. And if you can do that, then you can recognize that, hey, debt is an incredible tool and I want to do everything I can to build up my score so that I have an 800 plus score so that then I can use this debt to create more wealth. Now, if you guys enjoyed the video, please push the like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the little bell so you can catch my future videos. Because the whole purpose in building a good credit score is so that then I can help you to use that credit score to get good debt and build a huge passive income. And leave a comment below if I missed anything from this video, because if you've got any other helpful hints that I didn't hit on, I want everybody that watches these videos to know about them. Thanks so much, guys. Have a great day.